We are going to examine including and excluding types in Entity Framework Core. Including a type in the model means that Entity Framework has metadata about the type and will attempt to read and write instances to and from your database. The different including and excluding types are conventions, data annotations, and Fluent API. By convention, types are exposed in a database set property like we have right here to associate our DB context for our person class and address class. These types are exposed in your DB set properties on your context are included in your model. In addition, types that are mentioned in the onModelCreating method, which we will implement in a second, are also included. Finally, any types that are found by recursive exploration of the navigation properties of the discovered types are also included in your model. So this is right here in the address.cs. You see right here we have a person, my person type right here as a navigational property. And then in my person class, I have a list of address types. So automatically, once you have these navigational properties and the context associated with your DB set, these entities will be generated through your entity data model just based on the navigational properties itself. Let's say if we don't have an entity specifically declared inside of our context right here. So we have a DB set context right there, and we have a persons and we have an address. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click Add New Class. And I'm just going to create another class. And I'm going to say we have a person and we have an address. Let's just say car. So person has an address. They also have a car. Let's say right here. And in car, we're going to create just a couple of properties. Let's say prop tab, and let's make this an int. Let's say this is a car ID, and then come over here. Let's say prop tab, and let's say string car color. And let's come over here and make one more prop tab, and let's make this an int, and let's make call years. Let's say year. All right, there. We have this associated as a separate class. Now, if I don't generate in my database context a DB set, I can override the onModelCreating method associated with my DB context. So I can come in here and I can say protected override. I can override the basis of my onModelCreating method. I can come over here and say this is a void, and we're going to say onModelCreating. And inside of this takes a parameter of model builder, and we can say model builder. And inside of this, inside of our method, we want to come in here and we want to pass the parameter to associate. We're going to say model builder dot entity. So what we want to put here, we say entity, and we want to put the type right there, car, and we want that to be implemented there, and then we have it right there. So now when this class is generated, when we actually run our EF commands, we're going to have the car class associated right there. So without even declaring a DB set person or persons or anything associated here, right here with the override onModelCreating method, we can generate our car class right there. This is how we implement conventions for our different entities. We also have different include and exclude types to associate with data annotations. Data annotations are specific properties that you can associate with classes inside of your different entities. So you can say that you don't want to map a specific property from a class that you generate as your entity. So you can come over here and let's say to person, you don't want to have a list of addresses. You can come over here. You can say that this property is not mapped for your entity. So we can come in here and just type not mapped. And remember that this is associated in the namespace system.componentModel.dataAnnotations.schema. So if you don't want to map your addresses associated with your person class entity, you can put that right there. And then we can also come into our address and we can do the same thing for my person here. So now that this specific property right there will not be mapped when your entity is created. You can also do this with the Fluent API. So we could come in here and we can say that model builder dot ignore, and the class that we want to ignore is address. If we don't want this entity created, we can always put it in the onModelCreating method, and this will actually ignore our address class right here, so we don't have to actually implement it from this point. If we had a property on my person and I want it not mapped and I don't put that data annotation on that specific property, I can also do it with the Fluent API to associate what I don't want on my model right there. So this is some different ways to override the baseline DB context. Once you have the inheritance to associate with it, you're able to implement all of this associated inside of your project. So what I can do now is I can come over here and I can say NuGet Package Manager console, come down here, and we can implement the commands associated inside of our context. So we can come down here and we can say add migration, second migration. So we're adding the migration to associate with our DB context right here. So right now we can have that. We can also remove the migration if we don't want to implement that associated right there. And then we can come in here and say update database. And this will update to the newest migration we have associated inside of our context. And as you can see, this is what's generated. We have the create table car. We have alternate columns to associate in the migration here, foreign keys and all of this. So if we go to our SQL Server Object Explorer now, and we go to our local DB here, we go to databases, we go to system preferences, we go to our master, and then we go into our tables. We see right there, what do we have? We have our car class right there. It's associated inside of our system databases, and this was generated right here. So we have our second migration right here. And then inside of that, for our DB context, we have the entity being created on the onModelCreating override method, which is associated with inheriting from our DB context class. And right here, we generated this without setting it up as a DB set type inside of our application DB context. This is another way through the Fluent API, you can add different entities to your DB context. So right now we've created that and we've associated that table inside of our SQL Server database.